Okay, I like to go over a time when I went for a live world record in front of well, at the place there was about 80 to 100 people. And before I go over that, I need to set up the story first. And when I was a kid, I used to have a Guinness Book of World Records, and I'd see any record that there was, I was like, wow, that's super cool. Like the freaking 1,000-pound man, the 9-foot tall person that lived in the 20s. I was like, whoa, this is freaking amazing. And they also had these things in the 80s, these the Guinness World Record specials, and people would go for world records. And I remember one was some big old dude who basically, I think, broke the record for most clams ate in a 3-minute time period. He just I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Now looking back at it, I can say, yeah, that might have been on the gross side. But there was these things, and it was built up as a huge production. Okay, so this is what I remembered about, going after a world record and how everyone was like, "Rah." I also remember the King of Kong and watching that in the theaters, believe it or not, in 2007. I remember how they made it such a big deal about the Donkey Kong record, which is actually a really big deal still. So I sort of had an unrealistic expectation going into the place I was going to go for the record. So it was this place called SC3. They still have it from time to time. And it was the Southern California, I think, Classic Council place. And they usually didn't host someone going for a record. And I asked, and I was like, yeah, sure, whatever, right? And there was also someone else that was going for a record too. His name was Hector Rodriguez. He was he is still to this day the greatest track and field player of all time. And he also was going for on the arcade, but he was also going for a record on the NES system as well. And so I'm there, and the record I'm going for was the record which I beat the Todd Rogers record. So it was the Atari 2600 Galaxian score, and I already had set it, but I wanted to do it live because I felt like doing it live would mean more. And so my record at the time was 1.6 million. And I knew this was going to take a while to break this record. It was going to take at least 4.5 hours to beat this record. So I actually brought with me, because I realized sitting on a hard chair for 4.5 hours might, where I can't get up at really. So I brought a pillow, and I put it on the chair. I brought my Atari 2600 system, and I brought the cart as well. So I come there expecting this huge fanfare or whatever. And I started up, and I think the first try I got to 80,000, but I lost 2 men. And I was like, that's not going to work. So I stopped. I also realized I really hadn't ate anything, and I was probably going to be hungry because I was going to be playing this for 5 hours. And they had the snack table, and they had pizzas, they had chips, they had a lot of stuff. And I had my $10, which I paid, and that was just so that they keep the lights on or whatever, right? So I paid the $10, and I decided, you know what, I'm not going to get the food ever again. Because, I usually would do 2 or 3 trips to the food thing and then whatever, right? But I was like, no. I was like, I'm just going to do one big thing. I just floated up my plate. And the guy was like, what the freak are you doing with all this food? I was like, dude, this is the only time I'm going to be able to eat or drink or anything, because I realize I'm not going to be able to do anything for a 5-hour period. And so I just go to town, I munch down, and then I finally get to playing the Galaxian. That's the score. They told me that there was a power with the power, that there was a chance at any moment the power could go off and my score would be meaningless, because this was in their backyard, so the electrical situation wasn't that good. So after about, I started off really good this time, and after about an hour, Hector just decided to pack it in. I don't know if he actually got a record or not. He might have. Seemed like he didn't, but I was going strong. And after a while, I noticed something. It slowly dawned on me that basically there wasn't like this big old, yeah, you can do it, George. Woo! Go, George, right? There wasn't like people behind me watching. It was basically me in the TV screen. And then I realized that everyone else at the party or the get-together was actually having a pretty good time, and here I am. I'm stuck in my own little world playing this game. And I was like, and I noticed that people were cheering, reacting to, like, the warlords and the other stuff. And I was like, and all around, somewhere, there I was, playing this game, moment after moment. I would go to 500,000, then to 700,000. Then I flipped the game and went over 1 million, and I just realized, here I am, just completely separated from everybody, almost like no one, I was a ghost. I literally felt like what a ghost was, and so it was the opposite of what I expected. I was expecting to be, I'd have nerves because people would be watching me, cheering me on, and like, can I meet their expectations? But what I didn't expect was that people wouldn't care, really. They would be like, yeah, okay, he's doing whatever. We're going to do our thing. And I'm like, okay. I think around 1 million, I had a friend sat down next to me and like, hey, yeah, it's good that you're doing what you're doing. It was a good pick-me-up, because I was like, okay, someone sort of cares about what I'm doing. And so then he left after about 15 minutes, and I remember like an hour later when I was like at 1.4 million or something, and he was like, someone in the background who was like, oh, look, yeah, George is still going at it. Like, they hadn't even realized I was playing the game still. I was that much of a ghost. And so I was like, okay. But then they went back to their usual talking, and I was like, okay. And at that moment, I realized, look, what you're doing is not for them, not even for you. Just do it for the next person that's going to break your record. You're doing it for them, at least, so that you can put it to a point where they can actually appreciate the record when they break it. That's what matters. That's what matters in this whole thing, is a link between me and the next person that breaks it. And so that person could appreciate what they did. That was my main driving force at that moment. So I was like, I remember I was coming close to the record that I had set in private, and I knew that no one would notice I broke the record. So what I do? I yelled out, I broke the record! Woo! And I cheered for myself, because I knew that they weren't going to really cheer. They would be like, why is this idiot yelling I broke the record? So I did that, and I forgot to tell you also, it was early September, and it just happened, it was on Labor Day weekend, I think, and it was a hot day. It was a hot day in the mid-90s, and I just didn't think, and towards the end, I was getting, like, super thirsty. And then finally I hit like 1.97 million. I died. And basically after that, I remember being really, really, really thirsty. And basically, I decided, okay, I'm out. Oh yeah, I remember like a few minutes after I was finished, the power actually went off. I kid you not, the power went off. And I realized, oh, I sort of was lucky that the game ended when it did, because I don't know what would have happened if the power went off and I was still playing the game. Because there was a chance if I went a little bit further, 1.97, if you flip the game gives you an extra. Every million, the game gives you an extra, which is weird. So I just stopped right before I got another extra, but I realized that had I gotten the extra, that the game, that's probably I would have, and I don't know how they would have said, okay, well, I don't know. I don't know how they would have treated that. But I think there was someone that was a video game collector. The friend of mine I was talking about, he actually bought the cart. He offered me $10 for the cart that I broke the record in. And I said, okay, sure. And I autographed it. I put my score down. And I basically sold him the cart for $10, which I thought was a pretty good deal, whatever. And the tape, I decided to do something different with this tape. Since I already had the record, I decided that I was going to try to put it on YouTube, but I didn't know how to put videos on YouTube yet. I didn't have a video camera. I only had a VCR at the time. And so what I did was I was like, okay, I knew someone back east I was going to send the videotape to. And he said, okay, I'll put the whole video on YouTube. So I mailed it off to this dude. And he did put it on YouTube. He didn't put the whole thing on YouTube. He put 3 different 10-minute sections on. He put the first 10 minutes, then he did the flipping the score, and then he did the last part. And then he said, yeah, okay, I'll mail it back to you, right? And so I waited a couple months, 2 or 3 months, and I realized he's never going to mail me this tape back. I'm like, okay. No problem. I'm not getting this tape back. So what I'm going to do is, because I wanted to submit this score, I was like, okay, if I can't submit that score, I'll just go back, grind out a little bit more the Galaxian score and the Atari 2600 game. And I had another Atari 2600 Galaxian cart, fortunately. So I plugged that into the system and I worked at it. And I think like on the 6th day, not 6th, but very early, I had this goal. I was like, okay, I'm going to go for 3 million. But like fairly quickly, I got a score of 2,696,000. And I was like, you know what? Screw it. That's a really, really, really good score. It's not 3 million, but it's twice it's basically double what Todd Rogers did. You know what? I'll take it. I'll take it. And I also realized that the videotape, which I hadn't taken into account, it was an 8-hour tape. And so the score was 7 hours and 40 minutes. So because I couldn't get the live, I would have kept that record. The one I did live, the 1.97 million. That would have been the one that I would have had as my record. I would have been fine with it being a live record, but I never got the tape back. And maybe that's my fault. I said, hey, I'll give you $5 to send it back. But me being an idiot, no. So there you go. So, like I said, in the end, I realized, I had bogus expectations. So it was like a learning experience. Like, hey, what you're doing, this classic high score thing, isn't as big as you make it out to be. And so it was sort of like it was a bittersweet moment of realizing, yes, I just did this live. Yes, I broke a record. But also realizing that, hey, this isn't the most huge hobby in the world, and people, for whatever reason, this is a niche thing, and not a lot of people have it. Even at a classic gaming place like that. So yeah, I realized I had bad expectations, and that, you know what, maybe I was doing it for the wrong reasons. And so there you go. That's my experience of me getting my first world record live. I did do a couple other world records live. They were both from the Donkey Kong 3, which I'm the world record holder in. I did those 2 live. And maybe I'll tell another YouTube video story about that. And thank you for watching. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.